Hello and welcome. In this lesson, I'm going to talk about one of the most basic formulas used in spreadsheets, cell referencing. When I started with spreadsheets, I just used it as a list. I thought of it as a table with the boxes and lines already set up. I didn't know much about the actual functionality of a spreadsheet. The first formula I learned in spreadsheets was cell referencing. Cell referencing is a way to make some information in a cell show up in another cell. It's kind of like copying a cell. The only difference is that the cells are linked together. This means that if information in the original cell is changed, the other cell will update automatically. I'll show you an example of using a class list of names for this. Let's get started. Here I have a spreadsheet with a tab that has my class roster on it. And what I would like to do is I would like to make some new tabs with different information such as attendance or math scores, those types of things. But I would like to have the same class roster. So what we're going to do is something called cell referencing. Let me show you a little bit about that first. So for example, if I go ahead and click in this cell here in cell D2, and I know it's D2 because of my address up here. And what I can do is, whenever we're going to do a formula of any kind, we usually type the equals sign. What I would like to do is, for cell referencing, I just simply click on the cell that I want to show up somewhere else. So if I click on Jim Riley here, you'll see that this now inputs the number for me C2 and it changes color. That's because that's the address of this cell where Jim Riley is. So I just go ahead and click return and it will put that in there for me. Now Google has updated their information to do some autofill. So if they notice a formula that you're doing and they think that you might want to apply that to several rows, they will give you the suggestion for an autofill. If it is what you want to do, which looks pretty good here, you can go ahead and click on the check mark and say yes to it. Or you can click on the X and not do it. For now, I'm going to go ahead and click on the X. So right now I have Jim Riley here, C2, that's great. If I was to go back to Jim Riley and update it with some other information, for example, student 2, you'll see how this changes here. Now, maybe on the same page or in the same tab, we might not want cell referencing. It might not be that useful. But it will be useful if we do it on a new tab. So let me go ahead and add in a new tab here. And I'm going to rename this attendance. When I come up here, I'll go ahead and put in some headers. So I'm going to put in name. And because it's attendance, I'm going to be taking attendance on certain days. So let's go ahead and put in a date. And over here, I will go ahead and put in the next date. If I highlight two of these cells and I drag my cursor over to the box here where the crosshair is, when it changes to a crosshair, if I click and drag my mouse, it will go ahead and recognize that pattern and fill that in for me. Now this doesn't work with everything, but in this situation, this is helpful and saves us a bit of time. I'm going to go ahead and put a bold on my headers there so I know they're headers. And another thing I like to do with my headers is I like to freeze that top row. A very quick way to freeze the top row is if you come to the line here where the rows, the headers for the rows are, I can see where that changes to a hand and I can come over here and just drag that down and it will bring that freeze row down. Okay, so that bolder line is a freeze row. So if I was to start to scroll, my headers would stay the same, so I like that. All right, so I can come in here and with cell referencing, if I am here and I type my equal sign here in cell A2, I come back to my class roster and I click on Jim Riley there and you'll see how it's referencing class roster C2, not just C2 anymore, but it's actually coming back to this spreadsheet tab. And that's how we know that because it has the spreadsheet tabs name there and then C2 as the cell. So I'm going to go ahead and click return and I have my name in there. So that's great. Now, it didn't do the autofill here, but we can go ahead and do that. So if I hover over the box here in the corner and change to the crosshairs, I'm going to click my mouse and drag down. And once I release the mouse button, then it'll go ahead and fill those names in for me. I don't know if you noticed this, but there is a line here, and we see how some of our names are overflowing. So if I started to enter information in here, it might get a little bit messy. So I can simply hover up here between the A and the B, and if I click and hold my mouse button down, I can just drag this over to resize my column here. Now, the neat thing about this is, if I go back to my class roster and I decide, like down here for number 23, it says new student. Maybe I have a student's name. If I go ahead and type in that student's name here on my class roster, when I go back to my attendance sheet, it will type it in for me automatically. So that's why we want to do cell referencing. I can update in just one place. Now, let's say that I would like to add another tab with math scores. I can go ahead and click here, click create a new tab, go through and do cell referencing and all that kind of thing. Or since I already have this set up, if I hover down here at attendance and I click on the down caret, I can select duplicate. It'll make a copy of that sheet for me. If I double click on the name down here, I can go ahead and rename it to what I would like. And it looks exactly the same. And maybe up here I might want the same information. I might want the dates, or I might want to change my headers. That's fine. What I want you to notice is that with our class roster, this is still referencing the same location. So it's still referencing class roster C2. So if I was to come down here and on my math tab scores, and I recognize that, okay, John Smith, he didn't show up. He's not going to be in our class. So I just go ahead and delete John Smith from my math tab here. If I go back to my attendance, John Smith is still there, okay? And if I go back to my class roster, John Smith is still there. So this, we have to be careful when we're using cell references, that the idea behind that is so that we can update in just one place. If I end up updating in a different place, the only thing that it does is just erase my formula. So if I wanted to change this from John Smith back to something else like new student, because my formula is here on my attendance sheet, it'll leave it in there. However, on my math score sheet, it won't be in there because I deleted the formula. So sometimes that happens. So just double check if it's not working. See if the formula is there. If you don't notice the formula up here in the formula bar, then you can put the formula back in. A really quick and easy fix for this one is I'm going to click on that cell above, and I'm just going to drag the formula down, and it will go ahead and be in there for me. So just be aware of that. All right. Hopefully you found this useful, and we'll see what other ways you can use cell referencing in your work.